Bold City Sports Talk with Rob Moccio.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bold City Sports Talk. My name is Rob. With me as always, my good buddy Benny. We have a special guest with us. His name's Brian. Benny and Brian, how are we doing?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Brian.
How's it going?
Good. Welcome, Brian. Welcome. I think when we go and dive headfirst into the college football top four, huge shakeup. Humongous shakeup here. Number 2 LSU takes down number 3 Alabama in Tuscaloosa, 46-41. Hot off the presses. What's y'all's first thoughts on this game? Benny, let's start with you, bud.
I'm thinking Tua Tagovailoa probably wasn't 100% in that game. He's probably like 70%, 80%, and then he was dusting off the rust there coming into that game. And I don't think he's played football for 3 weeks, so it definitely showed. I believe he fumbled the ball through an interception, and as we saw, those 2 costly turnovers were kind of the difference in the game. I mean, it was kind of a shootout, not your typical SEC matchup. Wasn't one of those defensive battles like you usually see where it's whoever has the better field goal kicker, like LSU Alabama games have of past. So it was a high scoring, fun game, and I'll tell you what, man, I think it was crazy today. I saw something where the Alabama fans were already trying to say that they need to move on from Saban, but they got something else coming, man. Come on.
No.
The team you've beaten for the past, 8-9 years?
Yeah, I believe it was the last 8 years, and I do agree with you with Tua, but the thing is, it didn't take long for him to shake off the rust. I mean, 21 for 40, 418 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and with that aforementioned interception, I mean, it wasn't him. It was, I want to say, the Alabama defense. Brian, what do you think? What's your first take on this game? Again, LSU, number 2, taking down number 3 Bama, 46-41. What's your take on this thing, man?
My take is the last 2 times the Tide have played top 5 opponents, they've been out on their feet by halftime. The championship game last year, and this game this year against LSU. But like you just said, they stormed back in the fourth quarter with Tua for an injured guy, over 400 yards and 4 touchdown passes.
Right.
I'd take that even if he was injured.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with you completely. I want to say it was 33-13 going into the half. I go, okay, it looks like this is a completely different LSU team. They're going to take Bama to the shed. They're going to wrap it up. Nope. In typical Nick Saban fashion, a completely different team in the second half, but that defense couldn't get things straight. And every time that Bama offense would itch them a little closer, that defense just took another step back, and it just was, God, I'm not used to seeing a game like that, especially in the SEC where quote unquote everything matters. LSU looked like the better team. They were the better team. And, I mean, in the second half, you had a Bama team score 28 points, but all LSU had to do was score the 13 that they scored to eke out a 5-point victory. But this Bama team is surely not out of contention. Tua is still, even on a bum ankle, is still a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, in my honest opinion. But Joe Burrow proved to be the better quarterback come end of game, and LSU proved to be a better team. And jumping from that undefeated SEC matchup to the Big Ten's undefeated matchup, Minnesota, surprising to probably just about everybody here in the country, 31-26 on Penn State. It was a home matchup, yes. Minnesota, throughout the entire the 4 quarters, looked like the better team. And there's a segment we like to do here. It's called What Are You Doing? And I got to throw it out there early in this podcast. What are you doing? It goes to the Penn State coaches. The offensive coordinator, Ricky Ronnie, I don't know if he was coaching this game in a blindfold, but it sure as heck didn't seem to appear that he knew what he was doing. The defense was shaky at best in the first half. They adjusted in the second half, but this Penn State offense looked like the Penn State offense we have seen when it came to major games throughout the past few years. And they could capitalize. They were in the end zone 6 times in this game, and they only scored 2 touchdowns. Just last year, Coach Franklin came out and said, we want to be an elite team. We're just a good team, and we want to be an elite team this year. Well, hey, Coach Franklin, an elite team scores more than 2 times in 6 times in the end zone. They had ample opportunities, and there was a couple flags here and there. This is a football game. This happens. We know this. Couple things didn't go their way. It happens. They got a touchdown when there was 0 seconds left on the clock. They had plenty of opportunities to score a touchdown throughout the entire game, and they didn't. This is a typical Penn State team that we have seen the last few years, coached by Coach Franklin. This is a team that will live in the shadows of Ohio State from yesteryear to today to the future. This team is not going to go into Columbus and beat Ohio State. It's just not going to happen. And that boils down to coaching. This is a young team, yes, but these coaches, they had their gauntlet, what they thought that was going to be that big 3 games between Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State. Well, they went 3-0. Problem is they couldn't get through Minnesota. And Minnesota at 8-0. I shouldn't say nobody. Not too many people were counting Minnesota in the game, and they took care of business. And at the end of the day, they look like the better team. The Big Ten, I think, is very interesting to watch now. Very interesting because, yes, I do believe that Ohio State's going to run the gauntlet. They're going to win the Big Ten East, and they're going to face Minnesota in that Big Ten conference. But Penn State, I mean, if you want to be taken as a serious team, if you want to be looked at as somebody that's an elite team, per, again, Coach Franklin, you have to go into now Columbus and beat Ohio State. And now you got to cross your fingers that Michigan can go ahead and beat Ohio State, which we have not seen in a very long time. And to be honest, I don't think anybody's holding their breath that that's going to happen. Has Ohio State played anybody? Not to an extent, sure. But the way Penn State played in that Minnesota game, it's not happening. I'm sorry. I mean, that's my 2 cents on it. That's my what are you doing? Penn State has the talent. They just don't have it when it comes to the sidelines. And these coaches, I don't know what they prepared for. Both teams were on bye weeks last week between Minnesota and Penn State, and Minnesota came out with the better team, period. So when it comes to, and again, what a lot of people I feel like is a shocking loss, Minnesota 31-26. Brian, what's your first thoughts on this game?
First thoughts would have to be Clifford. He had a great day, 340 yards, but those 3 interceptions just killed drives.
Absolutely.
Hamler had another great day. He's obviously their stud.
Yeah.
Tight end for Penn State. He's a beast.
Great.
I love that guy. Just give him the ball every down and you'll move down the field. They have Brown, had over 100 yards rushing.
Yeah. But
just like you say, it's a typical Penn State team.
Yes. Just so close, but yet so far.
9 games, and then something happens.
Yes. You're right. You're exactly right. And, and to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, I don't mean to disrupt you. You brought up something that kind of reminded me when I was watching that game. Pat Freiermuth was dominating that defense. That tight end was dominating that defense, and it seemed like every time he would gain a chunk of yardage, they just stopped going to him. And when it comes to football, and this goes to sports in general, it's as the old acronym goes, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I feel like people tend to forget about this. If something is working, Doesn't matter if it's the run game. Doesn't matter if it's the passes going to the tight end. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is. Keep it moving. Keep the chains going, which Penn State was able to do in this game. But for whatever reason, when it came to scoring a touchdown, they totally decided to go, okay, X that plan, we're going to run the ball. At one point in time, I remember at the end of the second quarter, they're sitting there trying to score a touchdown, and they ran 3 running plays in a row. Totally abandoned Pat Freiermuth, who was nobody on that Minnesota defense was able to defend him. Nobody.
No answer for Freiermuth at all.
Absolutely. He was too big. And Minnesota's defense was too slow. Too slow. As I'm watching that game, I kept saying that to myself, man, this Minnesota defense is slow. But kudos to them for when it mattered, they stepped up. But they got some help from that Penn State offensive coordinator who just went against the grain and said, well, this is working, but let's try something else. And again, Penn State.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Penn State had their opportunity. They were in the top 4. What they had to do was win out, and they were going to be in the playoffs. The first time they are ever in the playoffs, the playoff rankings, and the first time they weren't even in there in a week, and they're already out of it. And there's a really good chance that they essentially have kind of cost themselves a chance at the college football playoffs. But Brian, please go ahead. Go ahead. I do apologize. But again, you brought up something I agree on. It baffles me. It baffles me how you get away from what's working.
That they, every time Freiermuth got the ball, he got yards.
Sure.
So had no answer for it. And every time he would catch it and he'd get yards for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you say, they'd move to something else. Like, why?
Right.
They have no answer for the tight end. Just keep going to him.
Right. I completely agree. Go ahead.
Having a good day too.
He was, but they kept going to him. And I remember one play was a screen, a fade pass, and Hamler, who stands at like 5'8" if he's lucky, against a cornerback who's 6'3". Come on. Like, what are you looking at? Throw it to Freiermuth. Nobody's able to stop him. Like, what is your problem? What's hard to comprehend about this? It just doesn't make any sense. Ben, what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on a Penn State? I mean, come on, number 4 against number 17. Penn State, again, they have all this momentum. They got James Franklin. They're getting the recruits. And you get a loss like this, and in my honest opinion, when it comes to a resume, this late into the season, this is a black and blue mark. This is a punch in the eye right now for Penn State. What's your thoughts on this?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you're supposed to win games like this.
Yes.
It's just like you said, that other gauntlet of games.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to win those, but you can't win the small one.
Right.
The small ones, you got to. It just goes to prove to you, you got to be able to get up for every single game. You can't take anything for granted, and it's all serious. I mean, call it coach speak when they say, hey, the next game's the biggest game of the season because it's the next one, but it's the truth,
It is. You're right. You're exactly right.
You got to kind of harness the now and everything, and I mean, it just blows my mind. There's just that one, thorn in the side game that Penn State should win, and it happens every single year. I mean, you look at these games against like Michigan State.
Yeah.
You'll have a game where Michigan State has no business beating them.
No.
And or the one that baffles me the most is freaking Iowa.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just some years where it's like,
how
I was destined to win the game by a field goal, and you're like, how?
Yeah.
Why? They don't even have a team that's on paper could match up with Penn State, and then somehow by the luck of the draw, the football gods, strike down the Nittany Lions that day. But it's it's exactly what you said. It's a black and blue mark, and coaches that can't win the small ones, it ends up looking real bad later on down the road. And if he is to keep on going at Penn State, he's got to win those games. And,
yes,
and those are going to be the ones that, and I'm sure, I'm not saying Franklin doesn't take the small games serious. I'm sure he's going to lose sleep over this the rest of the season,
of course,
and in the future, because you're going to constantly look at season and go, what could it have been if we'd have beat Minnesota?
Of course.
And, but kudos to PJ Fleck. He's got Minnesota back, and
yes, he does.
You kind of knew there's just something different about him. I mean, there's a lot of smaller school coaches that come up, and you're like, okay, well, they'll do good things, but you got and I know he's got a long bumpy road ahead of him. But look at Scott Frost. Scott Frost has a worse record than Willie Taggart, and Willie Taggart's gone.
Yeah,
Frost's still in Nebraska now.
Great, great, absolutely.
He is the unsung hero of Nebraska, and I think the fans are going to give him a little bit more time because he's one of their own. But at what time do you think that the fans they pull a Texas Tech and they gotta get rid of him, kind of like
sure.
they did, or Texas Tech had to do with
Leach?
No, not Leach.
No, not Leach. Arizona's coach, the Cardinals.
Oh, the guy who's out of Arizona.
Cliffsbury.
Kingsbury.
Yeah, Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury.
At one point, will Nebraska have to make that decision? But hopefully they don't. But sorry to get off on a tangent. But
no,
it's amazing. It's at the same time you're baffled. Why would Penn State lose a game like this? But at the same time, it's like, well, that's college football. The team that should win doesn't
exactly.
always win,
You're exactly. Yes, you're exactly right. This is classic textbook college football right here. You're talking about a team who had something to prove in Minnesota, who had the bigger stage with Penn State coming into town. They're both on bye weeks. Penn State is number 4. They're in the top 4 of the college football playoffs, and what do you know? They can't even last 7 days. And there you go. And there it is. And this is exactly what I was talking about last time we talked with Clemson being number 5. I said, I guarantee you it will not last long until we start talking about Clemson being the top 4 again. I knew it. This is, again, textbook college football for good reason. These make great storylines. Everybody wanted to see Ohio State, Penn State in Columbus undefeated going head to head. Everybody wanted to see Bama and LSU going head to head. And I believe in my heart of hearts, people wanted to see Alabama take down LSU, and it didn't happen. But then Penn State goes and loses to Minnesota. And everybody just goes, now what? Well, Alabama more than likely, and this is what I want to segue into, Alabama more than likely goes to number 4. They only lost by, 5 points. Penn State will now be pushed out and has to freaking hold their breath that a miracle happens, which more than likely is not going to happen because Ohio State looks like a legitimate team. Yes, I agree with you, Brian. Who have they played? I don't know. Can Penn State's defense, which now, in my honest opinion, has been exposed against Minnesota with the pass game, can Minnesota...
Bateman.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you were talking about the passing game, I just brought up Bateman for Minnesota. Had 203 yards receiving.
I know.
Against the Penn State defense.
You're exactly right. The thing is in the second half, Minnesota's offense was completely shut out. I believe they had 44 yards of offense in the second half. 44. And that goes to, and this is, again, very textbook college football. Minnesota was essentially holding on to win, which they did. But Penn State was creeping back. And Clifford throws that third interception. And again, some people go, was there pass interference? I mean, was it called? No. But you know what? That's football. It happens. It happens. Penn State got a lucky touchdown. Journey Brown, clock had expired, and Journey Brown runs for 4 yards. Again, You don't go into the end zone 6 times and only score 2 touchdowns. You just don't. That's not a college football playoff team. You want to be considered elite, Mr. Franklin? Then be elite. Don't preach it. Make it happen. And Ricky Ronnie, again, there was one point, and I want to say it was in the second quarter, that they ran three running plays to try to score a touchdown, and they were on like the 5-yard line. And they resorted to a field goal. You don't do that. You want to be considered the best, score a touchdown. Score the touchdown. And again, like you're saying, Brian, I want to continue to piggyback off that with especially that game. If that tight end is carving up that defense the way they are, you go to him because that defense can't touch him. He's too big. That Pat Freiermuth, the tight end for I'm telling you right now, I looked at him at the beginning of this season. I said, it's just funny enough. They're calling him Baby Gronk. I was like, this is Rob Gronkowski 2.0. I can guarantee you that. He's big. He has great hands. He runs routes just perfectly. And how you get away with what's working is just crap. It's garbage. You don't do that. You want to be a good team, then feed your good players the ball. Is KJ Hamler a great player? Yes. Is he a little undersized? Yes. When there's a cornerback that's almost a foot taller than him, you don't throw to him. It doesn't make sense. It just that loss for Penn State, it defines Penn State. That's a definitive Penn State loss. That's what they're used to. Close but no cigar.
So this also is a definitive Franklin, whether it's Vanderbilt or Penn State. He seems not to be able to win the big one or win the one that would make it a great season.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. You're so good. You're so good. But you know what people don't talk about? The so good teams. People talk about the great teams. So, Franklin, right. You got to learn. You have got to learn. And I will give him a pass on certain years. Again, this is a team we're talking about not even 10 years ago was dealing with sanctions. We're talking about a team that couldn't recruit players. So
here's the other thing,
go ahead.
In their pursuit to greatness,
sure,
you could say when Clemson first got Dabo, they had those years where they had the term deemed pulling a Clemsoning.
Right.
Is this James Franklin's pulling a Clemson point in the season? And, is it one of those building blocks that gets them to greatness later on down the road? I mean, I know they'll learn a lot from this. And funny enough, quick, little stat or a little history lesson. Brian and I were talking last night, and he said the last team that Minnesota beat, what was it, a top 5 opponent?
The last time that Minnesota beat a top 5 ranked opponent was 1999, and it was against number 2 Penn State.
Against Penn State, you're exactly right. 20 years later, they continue to just be the thorn in their side that I believe, Benny, that you had said. You're exactly right. And it's just, again, you want to be elite, then be elite. Don't go into the end zone 6 times and only score 2 touchdowns. That doesn't make any sense. And it is what it is. It's hard to win every single game. I'm looking at Penn State's schedule, and they had that gauntlet, and okay, Minnesota, I guess people just weren't really giving them the hype, but in my honest opinion, looking at the numbers, Penn State should have won this game, and they didn't. And it happens. It happens. We've seen some head-scratching losses this year. Georgia losing to South Carolina. We saw Oklahoma losing to Kansas State. I mean, it's college football. Exactly, Ben. It's just like you had said before, plenty of times before. That's what's so great about college football. Every game is essentially a Super Bowl. And we see it in the good games, we see it in the great games, and sometimes we see it in the games that we just don't expect, and that's just what happened. But again,
they had a close call yesterday as well.
They sure, yeah. To kind of piggyback a little bit off that, 42-41 on Iowa State, and that's further proves to me again the Big 12 just doesn't have defenses. They don't have defenses. There's not going to be a Big 12 team that wins the college football playoffs. It's just not going to happen, man. It's not happening. So let's go ahead. What you got?
Kind of funny, you say that. A lot of the narrative at the beginning of the year was that the Pac-12 would play each other out of the playoffs. Are we seeing possibly the narrative flip the switch? The Big 12 plays each other out of the playoff, and the Pac-12 slides in, which is entirely possible with where Oregon and Utah are sitting. And like we discussed last podcast, Oregon and Utah are going to end up probably playing each other in the Pac-12 championship.
I think Oregon and Utah will play each other. The problem is I think with the Ohio State and the Penn States and now the Minnesota, you got to throw them in there now. And then you got the SEC. You have the LSU, the Bama, and they want to throw Georgia in there. Go ahead. You're going to be trampled by LSU and or Alabama. It doesn't even matter at this point, in my honest opinion. Georgia essentially is there to play in the Rose Bowl at this juncture. Clemson is going to win out. Clemson is going to win against, who is it? Miami, I guess. Are they going to take the Coastal, I guess, in the ACC? It doesn't even matter. Clemson's going to steamroll them. In y'all's opinion...
It looks like it's going to be Vatech or Virginia.
Again, it doesn't even matter. And Virginia Tech should have beaten Notre Dame last week, but, kudos to the refs for throwing a couple extra hankies on the ground when Notre Dame needed some help. I think in my honest opinion, the top four is going to be something very similar to what we're looking at right now. I think, in my honest opinion, it's going to be number 5 and number 6 who play in the Rose Bowl. That is going to be the most interesting kind of like matchup now, because Minnesota really has thrusted themselves into that conversation. And I don't believe Utah and maybe Oregon. Oregon has that loss against Auburn now that looks bad. Shouldn't have lost that game. Shouldn't have. But they did. And they're going to continue to look at that game. In my honest opinion, you're probably looking at LSU taking it from here on out. I don't believe they're going to let Alabama escape the top 4, though I would not be shocked if Alabama loses to Auburn in Auburn and is 5th. But I don't think they want to see that happen. If the way things are ended after this last week, because I thought this was the most definitive week for college football right now, you got LSU at number 1, you have Ohio State at number 2, you have Clemson at 3, and I'm just thinking college football wants Alabama there at 4, and I think that's the way it's going to be. The only thing that will shake that is as we had discussed earlier, is Penn State possibly going into Columbus and beating them, but I don't think it's going to happen. Because why? Because of coaching. Because Penn State can't coach a good game. They just can't. It's just not going to happen. And you don't lose to Minnesota and then go ahead and beat, the Buckeyes in the horseshoe. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, I don't know. That's my top 4. That's how I think this season's going to shake up. I think Georgia will be 5th, and you're probably looking at, yes, again, a Utah or an Oregon, whoever ends up winning that Pac-12, probably at 6th. So Georgia playing the Pac-12 matchup for the Rose Bowl. What's your guys' take? Again, I mean, what are we, 3 weeks? 3 weeks. What do you have left to the college football season? 3-4 weeks left.
Yeah, 3 weeks at this point. And then you got your college or your
conference championship
games. Yeah,
right. Which again, I mean, you look at the teams, you could kind of pinpoint who's probably going to end up taking these games, man. I mean, like I don't know, but I don't know, Brian. What do you think? Who's your top 4? And who are you seeing at 5 and 6 here come season's end?
From season's end, I think it's probably going to be LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, And I really pray that it's not Alabama. I don't think that they should get in there just because they're Alabama or because they're SEC. But then who do you put in instead? Do you put in Oregon? Do you put in Utah?
No, you don't.
Does Penn State somehow step back in there?
The only way Penn State can even be considered a top 4 or 5 or 6 team at this point is, again, they go into Columbus, beat them, and then Ohio State loses to Michigan. But again, chances are slim. Chances are very slim. So, I mean, I don't know. So you give your top 4. Who's your number 5? Who's your number 6? Who are we looking at in the Rose Bowl?
I'd probably agree with you. Right now, it's probably going to be Georgia and Oregon.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I think that would bring in a lot of money. You're talking about a great, I wouldn't say great, but I'm going to say a solid SEC team against a very solid Pac-12 team. Again, what hurts Oregon is the fact they lose against Auburn. It just won't sit right. And I know Auburn's ranked and everything, but still, I just...
What about a possible Georgia-Penn State Rose Bowl?
I mean, it's possible, but again, Penn State has to beat. That's a case, in my opinion, where Penn State beats Ohio State, and Ohio State ends up beating Michigan. Yeah, and then you see a Georgia-Penn State, sure, which was the equivalent to the Gator Bowl not too long ago. What was it, 2016? 2017, where Georgia and Penn State played that Gator Bowl.
I'm wondering if we wouldn't see a Georgia-Penn State Sugar Bowl, possibly.
I mean, it's going to be it's getting New England. Oh boy, it's going to be a New Year's 6 bowl, sure, but I don't know, man. The Rose Bowl wants 2 big teams. They're not going to accept the Utah versus I don't know, whoever. Utah, Minnesota. They're not going to accept that, but. Minnesota. This is going to be really interesting because this was the beginning of Minnesota's kind of gauntlet, and people go, oh, they're not going to escape Penn State. Well, they did. And now, for that matter, Minnesota is looking down the barrel of at Iowa, at Northwestern terrible, and Wisconsin just beat Iowa. So for the Big Ten West, I think Minnesota more than likely, with Wisconsin having those 2 losses, and Iowa, what does Iowa have? 1 or 2 losses now to their name? 3 even. Minnesota is in full control of their destiny. And for college football purposes, what I would love to see is, yes, again, like Brian, like you said, Ohio State hasn't played anybody. I would love to see Penn State go in there, punch them in the mouth, and then see Michigan finally redeem themselves against Ohio State. Do I think it's going to happen? No. And then see a Penn State against Minnesota, Penn State, Minnesota, in the Big Ten, go at each other and be around 2. Who wouldn't love to see that? That would make for great college football.
That'd be a great game.
Absolutely.
A great rematch, and especially if they stay with the Frymouth for most of the game.
I mean, as they should have.
Game to watch again.
Sure. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, Benny, what are you thinking? Top 4 as we stand now. And again, this kind of was the big weekend to kind of see how this would shake up. And yeah, we're seeing some shocking losses. We saw Penn State go down. We saw Bama go down. They finally lost to LSU at home. And to be honest, that defense was embarrassed.
Yeah.
But Tua, I don't care what anybody says about him. Is Burrow maybe the number 1 pick? Sure. I don't care. Doesn't matter. How many times do we see these quarterbacks? There's number 1 pick, this, and that. Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers. Who's still playing in the NFL today? Aaron Rodgers. Who was picked number 1? Alex Smith. It doesn't matter who goes. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter who goes number 1.
Look at Tom Brady.
Look at Tom Brady, sure. Absolutely. I mean, it just boils down to talent. And Tua, man, even on a bum ankle, 20 days outside of his high ankle sprain, sitting there just throwing dimes. Did he have to shake off the rust? Yeah. Did he look like a legitimate quarterback after a quarter or two? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I thought he was going to lead them back.
He was so close.
Was not within hand. That LSU definitely held on to win it, but Alabama was in striking distance, and man, that's gonna put fuel on the fire. As much as we don't want to see Alabama up there again, I just don't know at the end of the year how you kind of count them out.
You can't.
Yeah, it'll be tough, and unfortunately, this playoff system is geared to where Alabama's been there before, and I think that they would probably take them maybe over another one-loss team.
Of course.
But as far as the top four, I can't really say that I disagree with what the AP did. Maybe the college football playoff rankings are going to be a little bit different, but moving Alabama back to fourth is pretty respectable. I mean, by all means, that was a good loss. If we're talking college football playoff rankings, I mean, they didn't hurt Florida too bad after they had lost to LSU in Tiger Stadium. But for LSU to go in there and beat them at Bryant-Denny, where it's 100,000 strong, I mean, that's incredible.
Absolutely, and for
LSU and Ohio State. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to hear your top four and who plays in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. I like LSU at number one. I think that I think they are the first team to have beaten 4 top 10 opponents in a season.
Sure.
Has Ohio State done that this year? No.
So, no one has. No one has.
Yeah. They don't need to be number one. I think LSU is the rightful owner.
Sure.
The number one spot with the crown. And as Hope said last night, go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Dude, as a matter of fact, whoa. Time out. As a matter of fact, our favorite coach is calling in. Ben Bryan, we have a special guest. Everybody, Coach O, how you doing today? Go Tigers. All right, fantastic. I wanted to get your take on an amazing win against Bama in Tuscaloosa. Teams do this. What did it take? What did you tell your team that essentially was able to get them over the hump against the Crimson Tide? Go Tigers. Okay, that's great. But what was it that kind of was able to kind of push them over again to get them? No, not everybody beats Bama. Your LSU, it had been, 8 years, something to that extent. You weren't able to get them. What made 2019 different? Coach O? Go Tigers. Okay, fantastic. Oh, okay. And he just hung up. So that was Coach O. Thanks for calling in. He's our number one fan on this program here. Go Tigers. I guess that is all it took. For Bama, the rest of the way through, you're playing a 4-5 Mississippi State team. You're playing a Western Carolina team. So they're 2-0, and then they go at Auburn, of course, the Iron Bowl to end the season. Auburn at 7-2. Can Bo Nix have that game? I'm saying no. I hate to be the bearer of bad news to War Eagle, but I'm going Alabama goes 3-0. They're going to be in the top 4. It's not so much a discussion as it is kind of cemented here at this point. And I
think Clemson's going to win out too.
Of course they are.
For my top 4, I'm definitely going to LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama.
Yeah,
at this point, because you got some teams on the outside looking in.
Minnesota has got to be on the outside looking in.
Minnesota is there. I think Oregon legitimately there, man. Georgia just took they just took a lot of injuries in that game against Missouri. I think they're down to their second string center. Cager got hurt again. I believe they had another pretty crucial injury. So they're going to be beat up possibly going into this Auburn game. And by all means not going to be something easy. That's going to be one of the best defensive lines that they've faced all season.
Sure.
That's why that's one team that I just, as good as they are, as much as I like what they do and what they've got going on, I don't know, man. I think
you're talking about Georgia here, Benny. Georgia.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
I'm referring to Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm referring to Georgia. I think I kind of see that being a really close game when they go play Auburn.
Sure. I mean, it's at Auburn too, man. You can't count out any SEC team at home. You just can't.
Yeah. I just think if Cager's not healthy, I mean, by all means, that dude is legit. He is their best wide receiver.
Sure.
And he's when he's healthy, man, he is absolutely excellent. So that's going to determine a lot. I don't think that they can rely on just the run game. But
sure.
As far as Rose Bowl, I'm going to probably say it's probably going to be like an Oregon. I'm thinking Oregon, like possibly Penn State, possibly. I thought the Rose Bowl usually was going to be a Big Ten school versus Pac-12, correct?
Generally, but I mean, like the Pac-12 at this point, I mean, again, or you got Oregon, but again, like I said, they have that black and blue mark against Auburn. I know it's week 1, and that's a tough week, but Utah,
Minnesota.
What are you going to put me to sleep? Come on.
Yeah, Minnesota could be in the Rose Bowl.
They could see that. This is what's going to make things so interesting. And again, kudos to Minnesota taking that win. They have an uphill battle. They have a continuous uphill battle. Do they?
They still got to play Wisconsin.
Wisconsin and at Iowa. Iowa's a tough place to win.
Yeah.
Do they fall asleep?
The night game?
That is a 3:30 game, but still.
No, it's 4 o'clock. But still,
4 o'clock. Okay.
Be a tough game.
Absolutely, because it's still, it's a way Big Ten game that these things tend to happen. I agree with you. Does Georgia get through Auburn? I don't know. Texas A&M, yes. At Georgia Tech, absolutely. But if Georgia loses at Auburn, then Auburn sneaks back in. It's that SEC kind of bloated kind of schedule. What do they do?
Definitely not out of the hunt.
No, not at all.
Not out of the hunt.
Not at all. I mean,
as far as the hunt, when I say that, I mean they're not out of the hunt for a good bowl game. LSU,
sure,
pretty much stamped their passport.
LSU is in the playoffs. I will guarantee you that after beating Alabama, LSU is going nowhere. I mean, I know after week 1 we were all talking, and I was like, this is a different LSU team. I was like, this is not the LSU team of yesteryear. Coach O, not only is he recruiting just amazing players at this point, this guy is creating an amazing team. And yes, kudos to Joe Burrow. Had any of you guys known who Joe Burrow was last year? Did any of you guys have any idea who that was?
Oh, yeah.
It's transfer from Ohio State.
Transfer Ohio State.
Transfer QB at LSU.
Okay.
I mean, they had.
And outside of him being a transfer quarterback, did you guys have any idea he was this good? An inkling of this good? No, of course not.
Definitely didn't show it last year.
No, he didn't.
Offensive coordinators, and now he's a Heisman candidate.
Who's your Brian? Me and Benny have talked about it. Who's your Heisman? And I know I hate talking about this. Is my number one most hated conversation to have in college football, but dang it, we're so dang close. Who's your Heisman? Is it Joe Burrow now at this point after beating Bama?
I think Joe Burrow's at the top there, but Tua, in the fourth quarter.
Jeez, I know.
I think he's up there as well. Sadly, I think Oklahoma with Hurts, with his video game stats, but they really haven't played anyone, but
it's the Big 12.
And then you got Fields at Ohio State.
Fields is too young, but I do agree with you. Fields has the potential to win a Heisman, absolutely. And, and to kind of piggyback off to what we were talking about earlier, he was originally committed to Penn State. And I think Franklin is just kind of torn up inside about that. And I believe that Kirby Smart should be too for Georgia. How do you allow that man? And I know, Jacob Eason. I know Jake Eason. He's doing well. But dang it, man, Fields looks legit. Dang it, he looks legit, right? I mean, am I right?
Did you see that interview?
Jake Fromm. Excuse me, guys. Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm. My apologies. Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm looks good. Justin Fields looks legit, and Jake Eason looks good. Looks good in Washington. Yeah, my apologies. So go ahead, Brian. I do apologize. Go ahead.
No problem. Did you see that interview Saturday where Fields said that he felt homesick when he first got to Ohio State and actually considered going back to Georgia and playing for Georgia? Can you imagine if he had gone back?
Yeah, I think Georgia would be in the top 4 right now. I think Penn State would probably be number 2 or 3 right now. Probably number 2 right now. If Justin Fields is a difference maker, yes, he absolutely is.
But how does Franklin let him get away?
I don't know.
Like you said, Kirby Smart let him go.
I don't. How does he slide through the fingers of 2 kind of heralded coaches at this point, right?
Right.
How? I don't know. Because he looks like a
3 guys like that.
I don't know.
I mean, at one time he had Eason, Fromm, and Fields on the same team.
And what's crazy about Georgia, I mean, you look at the NFL, I mean, Matt Stafford, you got him. Who else have they kind of... Who else has Georgia kind of created at quarterback?
The quarterback?
I don't know. Running back, different story. Gurley, Chubb.
You had the quarterback that went to Dallas, played for Dallas for a little bit. What was his name? He's on the SEC network now.
Well, there you go. That's your story. SEC network. It's quarterback for Georgia.
Yeah, for Georgia. He was like number 17. What was his name? That's just gonna bother me now.
I'll have to look it up. Let's take a second here. Aaron Murray?
Well, not Murray.
DJ Shockley? I don't know.
Was it DJ Shockley? Was that it? Didn't he play for the Cowboys, or was it someone else that played for the Cowboys for a little bit that was from Georgia?
No, he was with the Falcons and then went to the Omaha Nighthawks, which I'm guessing is not a good team.
Not a good team? No, man.
Team that doesn't play for the NFL. So I don't know. I mean, college football, huge shakeup this weekend. I don't know.
Quincy Carter. It was Quincy
Carter.
That was the last one.
10-4. Okay.
And then they had David Green. Remember David Green?
Mm-mm. As a matter of fact, I don't. But I again, when it comes to the Bulldogs, I think it's very similar to that of Penn State. I think they're setting them up because I don't think they're beating an LSU. And I agree with Ben. I don't think they're going to stand a chance against Auburn. I would not be shocked if Auburn wins that game. I would not be shocked.
After the South Carolina game, I'd agree with you.
Exactly.
Auburn definitely is looking like a loss.
How are we even talking about Georgia right now? How are we even talking about Georgia? And I really hope when those college football playoff rankings drop, I really hope we're looking at Minnesota ahead to Georgia. I really hope. But we won't. We won't. We know we won't. Georgia will be ahead of Minnesota by 1 or 2. I'll guarantee it.
Oh, at least.
How you're under... They got the UCF treatment. Minnesota got the UCF treatment. Number 17, they're undefeated. Well, they hadn't played anybody, and they go and beat number 4, and they'll be right behind the Bulldogs. Somehow, some way. And don't tell me Notre Dame somehow isn't going to be able to creep up into the top 10 by come season's end. Well, they just beat Duke 38-7. That's great. Ben, I think you have a nice little opinion on the Fighting Irish that I feel like I want you to kind of go ahead and take. Now, mind you, rest of the season against Navy, who is 24, conveniently enough for Notre Dame, Boston College, and at Stanford, I see Notre Dame a really good chance of going 3-0 here. Will Navy really give Notre Dame a fight? We'll find out, but I don't know about that.
Attack Navy will give them trouble.
They could. But Ben, I know, has a really good argument against Notre Dame, and I want him to take it from here. And then I kind of want to get into some NFL and kind of wrap things up, guys. So, Ben, what's your take on Notre Dame?
Ben stepped away for just a second. I'm sorry, Rob.
Okay, no worries. Brian, what's your take on Notre Dame?
I'm with you. I think they'll somehow sneak in just because they're Notre Dame.
Not sneak into the playoffs, though, right? Not sneak into the playoffs, right?
They'll sneak into a major bowl game.
Okay.
I think at least the
I think
Sugar
so.
Bowl, if not somehow getting into the Rose.
I see them getting like to the Chick-fil-A Bowl or something, like something kind of
like Peach Bowl,
right? Could you not see that?
Yeah, I could see that happening, especially since they're ranked 16th right now.
They're 15th currently, but again, Navy, Boston College, and Stanford, and Navy conveniently is ranked for them, but I just it's still Navy. You know what I mean? I mean, even at 7-1,
right?
Still Navy. And that will give them, the college football playoffs, whoever it is, kind of ranking these guys. Well, if Notre Dame's ended up pulling off a Navy win, well, they did beat a ranked team when, mind you, number 19 Michigan lost 45-14, and at the time, third place Georgia 23-17. They only had two guys at the beginning of the season. They've only had two teams that were ranked, and they've lost to both of them. Their wins against Louisville, New Mexico, Virginia, Virginia was ranked at 18th. Virginia's not good. Right? Not good.
I think Ben wants to come back and talk about Notre Dame.
No worries. Let me segue into here real quick. Bowling Green, USC, Virginia Tech, and Duke. That's who they've won against. Do any of those teams sound appealing to you at all? If I were to go, hey, your team, whoever your team is, beat those teams, what do you think they should be ranked? Do you believe that team should be 15? Exactly. When I go, they lost. Oh, by the way, they lost to Georgia and Michigan, the two teams that you can actually make an argument for to be considered a good win. Oh, they lost both of those games. Would that be your team? Being a truthful college football fan, Brian or Ben, is that a good schedule? Is that a good, number 15 school?
If it was anyone else other than Notre Dame, they wouldn't be in the top 25.
I'm saying your team. I'm saying if I go, that's your team's schedule, and oh, by the way, they lost the two teams that would have made some notoriety. Would you expect your team to be ranked?
No.
Exactly. Of course not. Dude, Notre Dame gets that Rudy treatment.
My team to go to a bowl game with
Exactly. So that I want, and Benny, are you available?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, you're perfectly fine. I want, and you had a great take on this earlier this week. Notre Dame against UCF. Go ahead. Take it. Just take it from there, man.
I think that would be a good matchup. Honestly, like I had said, what makes Notre Dame any different from UCF,
right?
The likes of Boise State, as far as the rankings go and the preferential treatment? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I'd say at this point, UCF and Boise State are ahead of the game because they're in a conference.
There you go.
It's almost like they're playing football on credit. they're playing football
Yes.
to credit of a team, or of what teams have done in the past. And
Yes.
Lou Holtz isn't there anymore.
Yep.
They've had bad coaching hire after bad coaching hire. Don't get me wrong, they're a storied program, but at this point in time, like you said, you lose those 2 games. What warrants you any credit?
Exactly.
In the national spotlight, as far as what they've gotten, it seems like since like 2012. They've been in big games. What's happened? They got blown out.
Yeah.
They got blown out in 2012. They got blown out by Clemson, 31-3, Brian.
Yeah.
I mean,
last year, they made it into the playoffs and got smoke checked because they don't belong in the playoffs because they play nobody in the regular season. And when they go to play a regular team, just the way Bama did, just this season, was it close? Yes. Did they take a loss against a real team? Yes, they did. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame, I agree with you 100,000%. I would rather see UCF the way they were disrespected the last 2 years being undefeated, but yet somehow, some way, you got Notre Dame sitting there in the playoffs last year. And what happens? They lose 31-3. 31-3. Is that a playoff team? No.
Absolutely not.
You're telling me you can't find another number 4 team? Oh, well, they played Clemson, who won the championship. I don't care. These are supposed to be the top 4 teams in college football. Don't tell me that defense falls apart the way they did in that game, and don't tell me that offense can't muster any more than 3 points. Come on.
That's another reason why that's another segue to why I hate to say it, but I think Georgia's got another loss in them. I mean, after the way that
I agree.
Notre Dame close.
Sure. And that Florida game, real quick, Benny, let me cut you off real quick because I want to piggyback off exactly what you're saying. I am not one for saying, did somebody win or did somebody lose? But I want to tell you right now, when I watched that Florida-Georgia game, that was, to me, the most boring Florida-Georgia game I have seen in a long time. People wanted to say it was good. Why? Because it was 2 SEC teams, sure. But did I watch 2 teams just kind of putter throughout the game and essentially somebody ended up winning? Absolutely. Absolutely. I was sitting there going... It was very reminiscent of that of the Minnesota Penn State game going, when is somebody going to pull out and just win this game? Mm-hmm. Why isn't this a blowout? Because both teams just kind of like, we're just going through the motions of playing a game. I know it sounds silly, and I know people are like, oh, you can't say that. Somebody won, somebody lost. No. And I agree with you. Georgia, I think, will lose to Auburn. And then Georgia will go ahead and play against LSU. And I think it's going to be embarrassing. Mm-hmm. Embarrassing, man. And I think the same thing would go even if Alabama were to win, man. Like, the East and the West, totally different. Just a total...
There's a big gap.
Huge gap, man. Huge gap. And Notre Dame never deserves to be considered a top 4, let alone a top 10 team, because I agree with you exactly, man. I'll take a UCF. I'll take, what was another team that we were talking about just not even too long ago? I'll take a Boise State. They're in a division. Don't tell me that these teams, an independent school, can be considered a top 4 school when, 1, you don't play a conference division game, and 2, you're the best of what? Of the independents? Can you name me another independent school that's worth the damn that we're willing to talk about in a top 4 division? No. Can you name me a top 10? In the last 10 years, can you name me a Notre Dame player that's playing in the NFL that's playing an NFL caliber position right now? And I ask you both that same question, and I'm being honest. I mean, the guy who had a fake girlfriend, I can't even can't even come up with that guy's name right now. What was he? I know he was playing with the Chargers, but like, is he doing anything? They wanted to talk about him about Heisman, but I mean, Manti Te'o, where's he at right now? And I think he is still with an NFL team, but I mean, come on, can you name Jeff Samardzija is a name that comes to mind, and he's a pitcher with the Giants in San Francisco in the Major League Baseball.
Brady Quinn's on Fox Sports.
Brady Quinn's on FS1. You're right.
Oh, you got Golden Tate.
Golden Tate. Okay, there's a decent name. Who else?
Zach Martin, offensive lineman.
Okay, last 10 years. Go ahead. Who else?
Got Jalen Smith, Dallas Cowboys.
Okay. Are these household names that you think people would like recognize? Probably not, right? For the most part.
Maybe Golden Tate, maybe.
I can agree with you on Golden Tate, sure. But I'm saying what I'm trying to prove. Notre Dame, and again, it's piggyback off what Ben's saying. Is it just a name? Is it just a helmet? Is it just a jersey here at this point? And I would have to go and say yes. People know who Blake Bortles is, right? For all the wrong reasons.
I got to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Interrupt you, but Ben Koyak on our powerhouse Jacksonville Jaguars is from Notre Dame.
There you go. Again, another household name? I don't think so. Come on, man. I can think off the top of my head more players that played at Clemson the last 2 years that are in the NFL right now. I mean, you know what I mean? All I'm trying to say, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about this, but I'm just trying to say the last 10 years, Notre Dame continues to be put into the top, 15, let's just say 15, top 10. And for what reason other than the fact that there's a movie called Rudy? I mean, come on. Because they have really cool helmets. Yeah, I totally agree with it. They have Kelly Green uniforms once a year. Do I think that's the coolest thing in college football? Probably not the coolest thing, but I think it's great. They got touchdown Jesus. But they can't win the big games. They can't. And on top of that, they're not in a division. And that's what it boils down to. Ben had brought up, Brian, at one point, they brought up Notre Dame joining the ACC. I continue to say to this day, and I'll get blue in the face about it, join the Big Ten, because I think there's some fun teams there. Some classic teams, the way Notre Dame would just fall into a really broad spectrum of some really great long-term teams. Where do you feel if you were the head of college football and could place them anywhere, and Brian Kelly calls you one day and goes, I want to join a conference. Where do you want me to join? Where are you placing them, Brian? And why? Why?
You know, at one point they were in the Big East, at least in all sports but football. They're in the ACC in all sports but football, but they play 4 or 5 ACC schools, so they really don't want to commit. Mm-hmm. I think you and I have talked about this in the past. Right. I think it's because of geography, but also because of some of the teams they've played, that it just sounds better to me as a better fit if they were in the Big Ten and everything, in all sports.
Right.
Football, all sports.
Because, and not even...
They play in the Big Ten in hockey, so...
Yeah, that's what doesn't make any sense to me. How can you play ACC football teams, play hockey different somewhere else? Join the Big Ten West. Go ahead. Join the weaker conference. Fine. Doesn't matter. Just join a dang conference, man. Join a conference and I will take you serious. I don't even care if in your first year you go 0-12. You're in a conference. You're playing, in my honest opinion, legitimate teams. Right? Am I right? Am I right on this argument?
You're right. It's just like with, when Penn State was independent. It made sense for Penn State because of where they were located, in my opinion, to go to the Big Ten and play the Big Ten schools. And I really think it makes more sense for Notre Dame that it would be a better fit for to play Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Ohio State,
Yeah.
things like that year in and year out.
You got to say Minnesota. You got to say Iowa.
Tech,
exactly. And then let alone, again, being lucky that you got a couple extra hankies thrown on the field to beat a Virginia Tech.
Right.
And then when you have your ranked opponents.
You play Navy and Army,
Yeah. Yippee. Cool. They're independent too. That's neat. It's like playing the best of the rejects. And that's what Notre Dame does. And there's no offense to Army or Navy, but I can agree the way I'm sure everybody else in college football can agree. Do you expect anything out of Navy? Do you expect anything out of Army? No. No way. Why? Because they're too busy defending our country. Notre Dame sitting here trying to play competitive football against a bunch of guys who, when they don't have footballs in their hands, they have guns in their hands. I mean, give me a break, man. Like, give me a break. Like, Notre Dame, pick a conference. You make up your own schedule the way any other team does, sure, but you don't even have to play conference caliber oppositions. And that's not fair. That's not fair. That's why I won't take you serious. That's why when you go to play Clemson, you lose 31-3. It's garbage, man. It's garbage, and that's why you should never be considered. And I think the only people just above you is the Big 12 because I think they have no defense. Look what happened with Oklahoma last year. It's all offense. Yeah. That's why you see a lot of close games that get edged out. That's why we almost saw Oklahoma took a loss this past week against Iowa State because they have no defense. You want the best four teams. Do you agree
with Iowa State going for 2?
Sure. Win the game. It's like when North Carolina took on Clemson. They shouldn't have been there. So why not go for the win? We're seeing that more and more. Watch football in the fourth quarter. You're seeing a lot of teams in a close game go for 2 points. They're, trying to get that extra point. Times 2. Times 3. You're seeing them try to get that extra point before it matters most. And absolutely, it's the same thing with North. Dude, I can't. Again, when you look at college football this year, I look at Mac Brown in North Carolina and I go, "There's a team that hit the nail on the head with a college hire at coach, a guy that has rejuvenated a team." North Carolina had no right, no rhyme, no reason to be that close to Clemson, and going for 2 is what they expected to do, and that's what they tried to do. They tried to win. And again, the same thing goes for Iowa. But that, again, Iowa State, Cyclones. That just, again, makes Oklahoma look even worse. That's a loss in my book in Wisconsin's resume when it comes to college football. They have no reason to be considered for a top 6 team going forward. They have no defense. This is a 50-50 game. You have to have offense the same way you have to have defense. And just to piggyback off that a little bit more, you don't go as Notre Dame into the playoffs and lose 31-3. You don't do it. You don't do it. That makes you look foolish. And that's what happened. And that's why Notre Dame should never be considered another top 4 team ever again until they're in a division. Ever again. They were embarrassed.
Totally agree.
They're embarrassed. And people are like, should Coach Kelly get fired? I guess, but it still doesn't matter. You need to be in a division. You can't look at a season at the beginning of the season and go, oh, who's our 2 ranked teams? Oh, and you lose to both of them. And go, oh, do we still have a chance? No. Heck no. Because a Minnesota comes out of nowhere and does what they do. Right? Am I right? I mean, do you guys, am I making sense here to an extent with some of these teams that clamor to be worth the dang when in all, when you look at their resume, they're not. They're not even close.
Sure thing.
I think we should make this a solely college football because I just think there was so much that happened this week. And I really do. I think, again, kudos to LSU. Kudos to Coach O. Go Tigers. Oh, he just called in real quick, and he just hung up. Go Tigers. Oh, he just came back in. There he is. Kudos to him for doing what he did in Tuscaloosa. That's not easy. It's not easy to do. That team's number one. Nobody should dethrone LSU from here on out. There's no reason for Ohio State to have been number one in the first college football playoffs, but they knew somebody from LSU and Bama was to win. It's a sport. And they knew Ohio State was going to be jumped. And it's proven. LSU, what more do they have to do? Who have they beaten now at this point? Alabama, everyone's favorite. Florida, Texas, who just got done beating Kansas State, who was now 16th? I know Texas isn't back. I know that's not true. But that's still a win. LSU deserves to be number one. They deserve to play Georgia in the East, I guess, at this point, right? And I believe they're going to steamroll them, and I believe they're going to go deep in the playoffs. I said that after week one. I know all three of us talked. And I said, man, wow, God, you got to watch out for LSU this year. They look good. I believe Ohio State is as good as they are advertised right now. Again, judging from the way Penn State played Minnesota, I think that's the only thing standing in the way right now of Ohio State. LSU and Ohio State look to go deep. Clemson ain't losing. They're not going to lose the ACC conference championship. They're not. That's your number 3 teams. And then you're going to have a dogfight between Bama, the possibility of Penn State beating Ohio State. Again, not going to happen, but I'm just saying. And then Oregon and Utah in the Pac-12. I mean, who else? I mean, am I missing a team or no?
I don't think so, Rob. But my only question really about Ohio State is, the only teams they've really played is Michigan State and Wisconsin. So do you truly think they're truly legit? Or
I mean, again,
they are.
They're probably, if you want to look at the SOS where people want to say the strength of schedule, they have to be one of the weakest teams. I think, in my honest opinion, Penn State has had a tougher schedule. But it'll come down to that game. Will Penn State beat Indiana? Yes, they lost their quarterback Indiana has lost their quarterback for the rest of the year. And again, when I look at paper, and if somebody wouldn't have told me the end of the Minnesota Penn State game, I would have said, "Oh, Penn State won this game, right?" No, they didn't. Oh, wow. Okay. Can Michigan beat Ohio State? I mean, that's what it's going to boil down to. Has Jim Harbaugh made this team better in Michigan? Yes, I agree they have. This is not the same Michigan team that played Army and barely eclipsed them in a double overtime win. This is a different Michigan team. Right. But it really is, man. It boils down to coaching. Can Coach Franklin, can he make something happen? Can he make a miracle happen against Columbus? We'll see. We'll see where this college football playoffs rankings end. I do believe, again, as we had spoken, LSU's 1, Ohio State's 2, Clemson is 3, Alabama will be 4. You got Georgia at 5, but not too much longer. And you probably have some sort of combination, 6 and 7, like an Oregon, Utah. Well, Georgia. Georgia's not going to move anywhere. Georgia's 6. Oregon 7. Utah's 8. Penn State's probably 9. And 10's probably in Oklahoma. Oklahoma doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. Don't let them sneak in. Don't tell me you're going to lose to a Kansas State who now has lost to Texas. And almost they beat Iowa State by 1 point, 42-41. Where's the defense? Big 12.
Non-existent.
Exactly. And it's how it is in the Big 12, man. The Big 12 doesn't deserve to be talked about. I'm sorry. It just doesn't. All right, let me ask you this question. Oregon, Oklahoma. I'd love to see that game. Who wins? Oregon, Oklahoma.
Oregon, Oklahoma?
Yeah. Let's just say
being a shootout with
right. Exactly. Exactly. The Big 12 and Big 10. Big 12 and Pac-12. It's almost like a mirror image, right? Conference.
Right.
No defense with some very flashy offenses, right? Justin Herbert versus Jalen Hurts. Who wouldn't want to see that? I'd love to see that as a Rose Bowl. I would love to see that. Utah, come on, put me to sleep. Oh, they got a good defense. Do they? Who'd they lose to? Colorado? Who'd Utah lose to? USC or whatever?
Utah, they lost to USC 30-23.
Terrible. And I know you saw, the Trojans just got done beating up on ASU, but again, what does that say? What does that say about the Pac-12? That says that, to me, any team can win whenever they want. And again, I will say this till my face turns blue. You have the SEC and you have the Big Ten, and outside of that, in my opinion, as of right now, there's nobody else. And I think, and it's very unfortunate, it's not Clemson's fault. The ACC is terrible right now. Excuse me. Brian, you had a great argument about this, that Florida State was always heralded, as this great program for the longest time when the ACC was terrible, but nobody talked about how bad the ACC was, right? Am I right?
Right. I still just don't understand that, where they owned the league for, 20 plus years, and they were really the only legit team in the league in that time period. Clemson, Maryland, NC State, North Carolina, all these powers from the conference were down, and yet Florida State was heralded as one of the greatest teams of all time during that time period.
Right. So
and it just didn't make any sense.
No.
You never heard any of them say how weak the ACC was.
Right. Miami was kind of Miami, but not Miami, and Miami's not right now, though I do believe that they are in the right direction. I like Miami for future reference. I think they are going to be better. I think Virginia was way overranked at the beginning of the season. I don't believe in Virginia Tech. I don't believe in Georgia Tech. I don't believe in Duke. FSU has got at least 5 years to even be considered a decent team, right? Am I right here at this point?
You're right. Now, who do they hire as head coach?
Great.
Taggart. Everybody
wants to talk about Deion Sanders. But my question to you is, can he coach? Oh, FSU's they're in shambles, and Deion Sanders to me is a flashy hire, and that's what they want because they want to try to recuperate that program as much as possible, as quickly as possible. But there's no way. It's not going to happen overnight, man. This is a team that is in dire need of help. And I don't know, can Deion Sanders do it? I really don't think so. But they failed. They failed very hard with Taggart, you look at career-wise, I think he's a 500 coach. I think 500, and that's under 1,000 games, something crazy. But for whatever reason, they took a huge gamble, gave him a ton of money, and it didn't pan out. So be it. But luckily enough for them, UCF's not any good. USF's a joke. Charlie Strong's the next coach to go. FAU is a laughing stock. I mean, they pretty much only have UF right now. Florida, that's doing anything. And yes, I believe Dan Mullen's a good coach, but I don't believe FSU will be down too long. I will give them 5 years at the very most to where they're not ranked. But this year, huge step back. And do I believe they made the right decision in firing Slick Willie? Yes. Do I believe that they did it a little too soon? Sure. You should at least allowed a second full season. But they did what they did. I believe Slick Willie, I don't believe he'll ever have a coaching job ever again in college football after this catastrophe. But I don't know. I mean, I think that pretty much kind of sums it up here, really, for what we saw with college football this week. Anything off the top of your head, Brian, you can think of that you'd want to add, or what are you thinking?
Just, how do you think this season's going to really pan out? Do you think that we're going to see any more shockers, any more upsets?
No, I think this was the week. I think this was the week to kind of pan all that out. And again, I believe Alabama losing and Penn State, I think those are huge losses, and I think that will end it. I really do. I really think that what we're looking at is the top four, and I believe that's the way that things are going to shake up. So, I don't know. Anything off the top of your head you can think of?
Could upset Ohio State?
No, not after that game. There's no chance. There's no chance. And I think Justin Fields is that good, and he's the difference maker. And he would, again, for Georgia and even Penn State, I'm sure they both are just kind of dying inside, looking at him doing what he's doing right now and going, man, it would be really nice if he was wearing our school team colors. So for Ben and Brian, I'm Rob. This is Bold City Sports Talk. Super happy you guys stuck around to listen to this. I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to comment, like, share. Give us some sort of pointers. Tell us that we're wrong and that we're stupid and we don't know what we're talking about. Anything, just make it happen. Until then, enjoy your sports.
It's Bold City Sports Talk with Rob Moccio.